Today we're talking about the integumentary system of animals. There is a great deal of chance that you are already familiar with the integumentary system of us humans. If yes, you are lucky, since you will have a useful background regarding today's topic. However, the study of animals' integumentary system is more complex compared to humans' integumentary system, since it involves the discussion of some associated structures like horns, feathers, and other parts that we will discuss later on. The integumentary system consists of skin, hair, nails, and glands. But since we're dealing with animals, the categories are expanded to include its appendages, namely feathers, fur, wool, claws, scales, hooves, horns, beaks, and other modifications of the epithelial covering of the body. The study of integumentary system greatly talks about the skin, and since we are all well aware even as a child that the skin is the largest organ of the body, it is justifiable how it serves a great deal of functions. The skin is an important protective barrier, preventing fluid loss, invasion of microorganisms, abrasive trauma, and protects the tissues underneath it. It also provides species-specific coloration, produces a pigment to shield the body from ultraviolet exposure, and provides site for vitamin D synthesis. Nerve receptors within the different layers of skin allow the animal to feel sensations such as heat, pain, and pressure. For many species, it is an important organ of thermoregulation through perspiration, control of cutaneous blood flow, and disposition of the hair coat. Modifications of the integument also perform significant tasks. The claws and horns are used for protection. The hoofs and foot pads provide a tough covering to the feet where they contact the ground. The hair helps control body heat loss and is a sense receptor. The nails protect the dorsal surface of the distal phalanx. There are two types of glands in the skin layers, sebaceous glands and sweat glands. Sebaceous glands secrete an oily substance called sebum, which lubricates the skin and discourages bacterial growth on the skin. Sweat glands, on the other hand, secrete sweat, which helps to regulate the body's temperature and is also a vehicle for waste excretion. Did you know that sweat is made up of water, lactic acid, and other waste products? Also, the degree of sweating differs in each species. For example, horses sweat excessive amounts, whereas dogs lose a very insignificant amount of sweat. The integumentary system is on the outside of the body and is resilient and versatile because it is subjected to a variety of insults such as trauma, toxic chemicals, and environmental conditions. Skin covers the external surfaces of the body. The skin is composed of epithelial tissue and is sometimes called the epithelium. It is important to remember that the combining forms for skin are cutane, derm, and dermat. The skin is made up of three layers: the epidermis, dermis, and subcutaneous layer. The outermost, or most superficial, layer of skin is the epidermis, that is nearly free of nerve endings. The prefix epi means above, and dermis means skin. The epidermis is several layers thick and does not contain blood vessels and is completely cellular. The epidermis is sometimes called the avascular layer because it lacks blood vessels. The epidermis depends on the layer below, the dermis, for nourishment. The type of the epidermis varies greatly from region to region in all animals depending on the location of the body and the function that is required. The thickest layers of the epidermis are found in the areas of greatest exposure, such as the foot pads and teeth, since it requires more protection. The epidermis is made up of squamous epithelium and the basal layer. If you want to know more about the different types of epithelium, please let me know in the comments. In most areas it can be divided into several histologic layers, and literally develops from the inside out. They are as follows: from deep to superficial, stratum basale, stratum spinosum, stratum granulosum, stratum lucidum, and stratum corneum. The stratum lucidum is not present in all species, but when present, it is found in areas of high wear and tear such as the foot pads. The deepest layer of the epidermis is called the stratum basale or basal layer or stratum germinativum, and it is here that new cells are formed. Cells in the stratum basale undergo mitotic division, which pushes the more superficial layers still farther from the blood vessels in the underlying dermis. Once a cell is formed, it begins to migrate superficially until it reaches the outer layer, the stratum corneum or the horny layer. As distance from nutrients increases, the cells flatten and die, leaving a dense mat of their primary constituent, the fibrous protein keratin. Keratin is referred to as horny tissue because it is commonly found in the horns of animals. It is the keratin that gives the skin the property of being waterproof. As the stratum basale continuously adds cells to overlying layers, the stratum corneum flakes off and is replaced. The rate at which this occurs can be influenced by trauma or disease processes. A callus is a local increase in thickness in response to continuous trauma. The drying and hardening of the superficial cells, a process called both keratinization and cornification, renders the surface of the skin tough and resistant to drying. This begins within the second deepest layer, the stratum spinosum, which is also called the prickle or spinous layer. The basal layer of the epidermis also contains a group of cells called melanocytes which produce melanin, the pigment that gives skin its color. Melanin protects the skin from the sun's ultraviolet rays. All animals have melanocytes. Color of skin is due to the pigment granules generated in the cytoplasm of the resident pigment cells, melanocytes. These cells in the stratum basale produce the pigment, melanin, which is brown, yellowish-brown, or black. Packets of melanin pigment are manufactured by the melanocytes and transferred to surrounding cells of the epidermis. The same process incorporates pigment into cells that cornify into hairs. The expression of different colors in skin and hair comes primarily from the relative amount of melanin produced in the melanocytes rather than from differences in numbers of melanocytes or presence of other pigments. This expression can be influenced by certain pituitary hormones, notably melanocyte-stimulating hormone (MSH) and adrenocorticotropic hormone (ACTH). However, the absence of pigment in the skin, a condition called albinism, which may be partial or total, arises from a genetic inability of melanocytes to manufacture pigment or melanin. These animals have white skin and white hair. Their eyes are a bright red because of the lack of pigment in their retinas, which makes the blood vessels within their eyes visible. Lack of pigment can render the skin and surface mucous membranes more susceptible to actinic damage, like cellular damage due to ultraviolet light, hence formation of carcinoma of the skin or other exposed epithelia. Cancer eye or squamous cell carcinoma of the conjunctiva of the eye is common in white-faced cattle like Hereford living at high elevations, where the ultraviolet component of sunlight is little attenuated. On the other hand, animals that develop melanoma have melanocytes that produce excessive amounts of melanin. The epidermis forms an undulating sheet with finger-like projections, the epidermal pegs, which project into the underlying connective tissue, the dermis. Moving on with the next and underlying layer, the dermis, also called the corium, is considered the true layer of skin because it contains blood vessels, lymph vessels, sweat glands, hair follicles, nerve fibers and the accessory organs of the skin. The dermis is the layer directly deep to the epidermis. This layer contains a connective tissue called collagen, the major fiber in the dermis, which gives the layer the effects of elasticity and longevity. Collagen can be found in bone, tendons, ligaments, and cartilage as well. It bears ridges and nipple-like projections, the dermal papillae, that interdigitate with the overlying epidermis. These are most especially prominent in weight-bearing structures, such as footpads and hoofs. The interface between epidermal pegs and dermal papillae provides increased surface area for formation of a strong junction between these two layers. A blister is a local disruption of this association between layers, usually due to repeated trauma or thermal injury. Other than collagen, the dermis also contains other connective tissue, which is composed of the following cells: fibroblasts, the fiber-producing cells, histiocytes, the phagocytic cells that engulf foreign substances, also called tissue macrophage. Mast cells, the cells that respond to insult by producing and releasing histamine and heparin. Histamine, the chemical released in response to allergens that causes itching. Heparin, the anticoagulant chemical released in response to injury. Did you know that perception is the ability to recognize sensory stimuli? Perception is received by nerve impulses that recognize temperature, touch, pain, and pressure. Moreover, tactile perception is the ability to recognize touch sensation. In nearly all areas of the body, a layer of loose connective tissue separates the dermis from underlying structures. This areolar connective tissue, known variously as the superficial fascia, subcutis, subcutaneous layer, or hypodermis. It is the innermost and fatty layer of the skin which permits movement of the skin without tearing. Where the skin is tightly attached to underlying bone or muscle, a dimple on the body surface may be seen. This is a tie, as is seen where the dermis is attached to the spinous processes of vertebrae. The primary function of this layer is to produce fat to insulate the body. The predominant cell type is the lipocyte, or fat cell. Variable amounts of fat or lipid, the panniculus adiposis, are present in the hypodermis with species-dependent distribution and relative abundance. The panniculus adiposis is an especially notable feature of pigs, on the dorsum of the pig, and it is called back fat. Adipocytes are fat cells that produce lipid. Adip is the combining form for fat. Keep learning. Thank you for watching.